What separates a director whose films get 1% on Rotten Tomatoes from someone whose movies are still studied to this day in film school? It's not just talent, it's vision, dedication, and the willingness to evolve beyond just a camera and special effects. Today, we're breaking down the 7 levels of movie directors from trash tier to GOAT tier. Let's get into it. Level 1, Trash, Uwe Boll. The German director made over 30 features while holding some of the lowest Rotten Tomatoes scores in cinema history. House of the Dead sits at 4%. Alone in the Dark earned 1%, and that is just to name a few. But here's the thing most people miss. Boll doesn't seem to want to create good movies, much less great ones. It turns out that throughout his career, he exploited a German tax shelter loophole that allowed investors to write off 100% of production costs, only paying taxes on profits. The minute a film made money, investors owed taxes, so the incentive was to keep losing money. Boll wasn't trying to make good movies. He was gaming the system, pre-selling distribution rights before shooting a single frame. What this means is that Boll was making money before a movie was made, and not from the profits it made. And we wonder why he couldn't be bothered. When critics destroyed his work, he challenged 5 of them to actual boxing matches in 2006. He won all 5 by technical knockout. The former amateur boxer beat the living hell out of his harshest reviewers, then calmly left the ring. But it turned out to all be a promotional event for his most recent movie at the time, Postal. After the tax loophole closed in 2006, Boll struggled to secure funding. He eventually retired to the restaurant business, opening the Michelin-recognized Bauhaus in Vancouver. He admitted he has enough money to play golf until I'm dead.
Maybe I shouldn't do it then. I have enough money to play golf till I'm dead.
Boll represents trash tier directing at its purest. Zero evolution across dozens of films, fundamental incompetence with the craft, and a complete disinterest in improvement. His career wasn't built on artistic merit or commercial viability. It was funded by everything except talent. And Boll isn't the only one in our trash tier. Tommy Wiseau. Wiseau's most memorable movie, The Room, cost $6 million with a funding source that remains mysterious to this day. He shot the film simultaneously on 35mm film and HD video, a decision that was both pointless and expensive. The green screen work was visibly amateurish. Continuity errors plagued every scene, and Paramount Pictures rejected it within 24 hours. The twist? The Room became a midnight movie sensation, eventually earning over $30 million through cult screenings, a 5 times return on investment. But Wiseau's genius wasn't the reason for its success. Ironically, it was his lack of genius that made it a success. Wiseau's initial theatrical run grossed only $1,900 from 2 theaters over 2 weeks. But word of mouth and audience participation rituals, like throwing plastic spoons at the screen, transformed it into a cultural phenomenon. In 2017, James Franco chronicled the chaotic production in his movie The Disaster Artist, with Franco playing Wiseau's character and Wiseau himself playing a supporting role. What this reveals is that even trash tier directing can become profitable through cult status, but it requires becoming a joke first. Directors in this tier show zero evolution, lack fundamental filmmaking competence, and succeed despite themselves, not because of the films, but because of loopholes or the sheer absurdity of it. But technical skill alone isn't enough to escape the bottom tiers, as the next tier of directors reveals. Level 2, Bad Michael Bay. Michael Bay has directed 6 films that grossed over $1 billion worldwide. Among his works, the Transformers franchise alone made $4.8 billion. Bay pioneered what critics call Bayhem, which features rapid cuts, low-angle hero shots, and circular camera movements. His average shot length is 3 seconds compared to the industry standard of 6 to 8. But despite their massive commercial success, his Transformers films averaged 15 to 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fellow filmmaker Roger Ebert even called him the devil's own filmmaker. But still, Bay received 5 Razzie nominations. His defense? He unapologetically makes films for mass audiences, not critics. One good thing about Bay is that he understands cameras and editing. He can execute massive action sequences, but he's the epitome of a remixer, assembling pre-existing cultural material from music videos, video games, and other blockbusters into a glossy, soulless spectacle. Not surprising, as his career began as a music director by directing Donny Osmond's Soldier of Love music video in 1988, and his signature style, backlighting, dry ice, colored light, and carousel camera movement, was formed then. For this reason alone, he brings absolutely nothing to elevate his material beyond competent technical execution. It's craft without art, spectacle without substance, and he's not the only one guilty of this. Brett Ratner. The American director's Rush Hour trilogy made $850 million combined. He also took over X-Men, The Last Stand from Bryan Singer with only 10 months of prep time. The film was a commercial success, making $459 million worldwide, but killing off major characters like Cyclops and Professor X with minimal screen time, diverging heavily from the beloved Dark Phoenix storyline. Although Ratner was known as a competent journeyman, he was uninspiring. Studios only called him to finish franchises safely, and his average Rotten Tomatoes rating was 39%. And in 2017, misconduct accusations ended his directing career. He hasn't worked since. The thing is, bad directors understand film grammar. They know how to block a scene, cut for continuity, and deliver on schedule. They just have nothing interesting to say with it. The movies are functional, forgettable, and completely interchangeable with any other competent director. We can say they are watchable, but nothing more. Bay and Ratner both prove that commercial success and critical respect don't always overlap, and that technical skill without an identity creates a ceiling you can't break through. And the next level requires just that: a visual identity. Level 3, middle, Zack Snyder, formerly a commercial director who pioneered speed ramping, that slow motion to fast motion effect everyone copied. The 2006 movie 300 made $456 million and revolutionized green screen filmmaking. Next came Man of Steel, which brought in $668 million but polarized Superman fans. Then came the Snyder Cut saga. All of these movies were a commercial success and undeniably feature his mark. But despite the stunning visuals and CGI, they lacked substance. Critics even called his works all frosting. No cake, as he prioritizes visuals over character depth. But his devoted fanbase appreciates his mythic approach. This reveals that a distinct style creates loyalty from audiences, but doesn't guarantee respect from your peers. It is true that Snyder has an unmistakable visual identity, as you would know his work immediately. But style without substance guarantees that he ranks in the middle of the barrel. But the middle of the barrel tends to contain the average, so he's not the only one in this tier. Guy Ritchie. The English filmmaker made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels for £960,000. It grossed $28 million. His signature became rapid-fire British dialogue, non-linear editing, and criminal underworld settings with dark comedy. His 2000 movie Snatch was a critical and commercial hit. Then came Swept Away in 2002, a movie that rode off Madonna's fame only to earn 6% on Rotten Tomatoes and a Golden Raspberry. He turned it around in 2009 with Sherlock Holmes, which made $524 million, a massive comeback. Ritchie's career proves you can be brilliant within a specific genre but struggle the moment you step outside your comfort zone. Snyder and Ritchie show that mid-tier directors have recognizable styles that separate them from the bad tier, but that style ends up becoming a limitation rather than a strength. So, technical skill and visual flair can get you to the mid-tier but still aren't enough to reach the upper tiers. Level 4, okay. Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau launched the MCU with Iron Man in 2008, and the film made $585 million, with much of the dialogue improvised because the script wasn't finished during filming. The actor turned director also took a major risk casting Robert Downey Jr. despite his troubles. The Jungle Book in 2016 used groundbreaking virtual production and made $965 million. Another movie of his, The Lion King, brought in $1.6 billion, but critics dismissed it as a shot-for-shot remake. Favreau pioneered stagecraft LED volume technology on The Mandalorian, revolutionizing how films are made. What most people don't know is that while Favreau excels at executing studio vision and launching franchises, his films rarely carry a distinct authorial voice. They feel engineered for mass appeal rather than personal expression. He is known to be reliable and competent, as he can launch billion-dollar franchises successfully, but his style as a director is still evolving. Ron Howard. Ron Howard has been directing for over 40 years with remarkable consistency. A Beautiful Mind won him Best Director and made $313 million. Apollo 13 pioneered innovative zero-gravity filming techniques that are still studied today. When the original directors of Solo were fired mid-production, Howard stepped in and delivered exactly what the studio needed, a competent, workmanlike result that wouldn't embarrass anyone. His failing, however, is that Howard lacks any distinctive visual style whatsoever. You could replace him with another competent director and most audiences genuinely wouldn't notice the difference. He got his start back in the 70s with a deal with Roger Corman, acting in Grand Theft Auto for almost nothing in exchange for directing it. His entire career since then has been defined by reliability over artistry. The OK tier represents Hollywood's favorite directors. They're the safe hands who know how to operate within the system, deliver on time, stay on budget, and never make waves. Favreau launches billion-dollar franchises. Howard never embarrasses anyone. But that safety comes at a steep cost. Their work is functional, profitable, and completely forgettable. These are the directors that studios, other directors, and audiences love but forget the moment they leave the theater. The jump to the next level requires something neither of these directors possesses, a singular vision that can't be replicated. Level 5, good, Denis Villeneuve. The Quebec filmmaker has emerged as one of the most exciting directors working in large-scale cinema today. Blade Runner 2049 earned 88% on Rotten Tomatoes and worked with the legendary cinematographer Roger Deakins, who finally won his Oscar. But the film disappointed at the box office, $267 million on a $150 million budget. Then Villeneuve adapted Dune, the novel considered unadaptable after David Lynch's catastrophic 1984 attempt. Part 1 made $407 million and won 6 Oscars. Part 2 brought in $714 million with massive critical acclaim. Here's what makes Villeneuve special. His technique favors minimalist dialogue and visual storytelling over exposition. He shoots on film, uses practical effects wherever possible, and creates symmetrical framing that generates overwhelming scale. He's also one of the few male directors with a genuine sensitivity to female protagonists and maternal themes. But there's a reason he's still good tier and not great. Time. Villeneuve took a 9-year sabbatical from 2000 to 2009, staying home to raise his children because he considered his early films artistic failures. He only returned when he found projects he felt proud of. He needs more years and more masterpieces to build a complete legacy that stands against the all-time greats. His talent is undeniable. The body of work just isn't there yet. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright pioneered visual comedy through editing, packing every single frame with information and meaning. His Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End created genre parodies that also worked as excellent examples of those very genres. His 2017 film Baby Driver featured over 6,000 edits, with every single cut synced to the music beat and all action choreographed to the soundtrack. The film made $226 million with 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World bombed spectacularly at the box office, $48 million on an $85 million budget, but became a cult classic that pioneered comic book visual language on screen. Wright's limitation? He's never tackled serious drama or significantly expanded his scope beyond clever genre exercises. When he tried to work within the Marvel system on Ant-Man, creative differences forced him out. His mastery within specific boundaries is absolute, but those boundaries keep him from the next tier. He has perfected a style but hasn't evolved beyond it. So, while directors in the good tier might have their criticisms, they're still building their legacies and have proved they can sustain excellence across decades and evolve against different challenges. Level 6? Great. The Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan Coen, directed together from 1984 to 2018, building a body of work that spans crime dramas like Fargo and No Country for Old Men, comedies like The Big Lebowski, and period pieces like True Grit. No Country for Old Men won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. They worked with cinematographer Roger Deakins on 13 films, meticulously storyboarding everything before shooting a single frame. Their characters are quirky and memorable. Their humor is pitch black. Their morality is deeply ambiguous. They inspired an entire generation of indie filmmakers who tried to copy their distinctive style. So what's missing? They never created a single film that became a cultural phenomenon the way Spielberg did with Jaws or Lucas did with Star Wars. Consistent excellence across decades, absolutely, but no film that fundamentally changed everything about how movies are made or watched. Paul Thomas Anderson made Boogie Nights at 27 and Magnolia at 29, announcing himself as a major talent. There Will Be Blood paired him with Daniel Day-Lewis and earned 2 Oscars from 8 nominations, marking a major shift in his style from kinetic energy to quiet, measured intensity. The master pushed even further into psychological complexity. Phantom Thread gave Day-Lewis his final performance before retirement. Anderson collaborates with Radiohead's Johnny Greenwood on scores and favors long, complex tracking shots with operatic emotional scope. He's an actor's director who consistently draws career-best performances from his cast. Every single film he makes is treated as a major cinematic event, but his filmography is relatively small compared to the all-time greats, which limits his overall cultural penetration. He makes masterpieces, he just hasn't made enough of them yet, and they haven't reached the massive global audiences that separate great from GOAT. Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan has never made a film rated under 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, not a single real failure in his entire career. The Dark Knight made $1 billion and elevated the superhero genre to prestige filmmaking with Heath Ledger's Joker. Inception brought in $836 million as completely original intellectual property. No franchise, no source material. Interstellar consulted with physicist Kip Thorne to ensure scientific accuracy. Oppenheimer made $952 million for a 3-hour R-rated historical biopic and won 7 Oscars, including Best Director. Nolan crashes real planes instead of using CGI. He flips actual semi-trucks for practical effects. He advocates relentlessly for IMAX cinematography and theatrical exhibition. He makes $200 million intellectual blockbusters with complete creative control and zero studio interference. So why isn't he in the GOAT tier? He's only been directing feature films since 1998. That's 26 years. Scorsese has 56. Spielberg has over 50. Nolan hasn't had enough time to prove his work will endure across generations the way the GOATs have. The perfect track record is impressive, but GOAT status requires the test of time. Quentin Tarantino. The video store clerk turned auteur changed independent filmmaking forever with Pulp Fiction, which made $214 million on an $8 million budget. He created an entirely unique cinematic language, non-linear storytelling, razor-sharp dialogue packed with pop culture references, extreme violence mixed with dark humor. His films are instantly recognizable within the first 5 minutes. Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, every single one profitable, every single one influential. He's the most imitated director of the 90s and 2000s. He launched careers, revived exploitation cinema, and made genre filmmaking respectable again. But here's the limitation. Tarantino has made 9 features and plans to retire at 10. That's a tiny filmography compared to the GOATs. And his cultural impact, while massive, feels generational rather than timeless. Younger audiences today don't reference Tarantino the way they reference Spielberg or Kubrick. His influence is undeniable, but it's starting to feel confined to a specific era rather than across all of cinema history. Plus, his work has grown increasingly controversial. Critics argue his post-Jackie Brown films show lack of discipline and that his signature dialogue has become a caricature of itself. While we all can agree that great directors make masterpieces that critics celebrate and audiences remember, the next tier are GOAT directors that make masterpieces everyone knows and change cinema permanently. Level 7. GOAT. Martin Scorsese has been directing for 56 years. Taxi Driver defined 1970s New Hollywood. Raging Bull is considered one of the greatest films ever made. Goodfellas redefined the gangster genre with its 3-minute Copacabana tracking shot done in a single take. The Departed finally won him Best Director in 2006. He's made 26 features, almost all critically acclaimed. He pioneered using popular music in soundtracks, freeze frames, voice-over narration, and rapid editing that influenced everyone after him. But what elevates Scorsese isn't just his films. He's also a film preservationist who saved countless classics from decay, a historian and teacher who elevated American cinema to an art form. He didn't just make movies, he changed how we think about movies. Steven Spielberg is the highest grossing director. One thing most didn't know was that at 18, he made Firelight for $600, screened it at Phoenix Little Theater for 75 cents per seat, and turned a profit of exactly $1. That entrepreneur went on to gross $10 billion total. He invented the modern blockbuster with Jaws in 1975 and pioneered the summer release strategy Hollywood still uses. Saving Private Ryan revolutionized war film combat cinematography. Every war movie since has copied it. 3 Oscars from 19 nominations across 34 films, almost all profitable. He defined childhoods with E.T., Jurassic Park, and Indiana Jones while making prestige dramas like Schindler's List. His versatility, longevity, commercial success, and artistic achievement remain unmatched. Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick made only 13 features, but every single one is studied in film schools worldwide. He demanded 50 to 100 takes per shot. Shelley Duvall endured 127 takes of the baseball bat scene in The Shining. He shot Barry Lyndon by candlelight using NASA lenses. 2001, A Space Odyssey predicted space travel before the moon landing and influenced every sci-fi film since. Made in 1968 without computers, its effects still look better than most CGI today. His films grow in stature every year. Critics who dismissed The Shining now call it a masterpiece. 2001 was polarizing in 1968, but is now universally recognized as one of cinema's greatest achievements. This hierarchy reveals Hollywood's hidden truth. Talent alone isn't enough. The best directors didn't just make great films. They changed how every filmmaker after them approaches the medium. They created shared cultural experiences that transcend generations. They proved that cinema isn't just entertainment. It's art, history, and collective memory all at once. Which director do you think we got wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And here's one final question before you go. If you could only watch films from one tier for the rest of your life, which level would you choose?